Hello and welcome to the first episode of 2026 of Kids in Cyber. I'm really excited for this conversation. It's really important. There's big questions at the moment around the social media ban, moving it over to the UK, but it's interesting to see how it's been affected over in Australia. With me today, I have Taihan. Are you able to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what it is you do?
Yeah, hey everyone, my name's Taihan. I'm currently a year 12 student here in Australia. I've been very much involved in the youth advocacy and representation space, specifically with government. So some of my recent roles have been serving as the elected youth premier in the Victorian Youth Parliament. Recently, I've been chairing the federal government steering committee as one of 15 young people selected from around Australia, advising the Australian federal government on how best to engage with young people. And outside of that, I've been working as a young advisor with a number of youth organisations in Australia.
That's great, thank you. So, from what you're hearing, how are young people actually feeling about the social media ban? Do they feel like it's protecting them? Do they feel like it's restrictive? What's the general feel over there amongst the youth?
Yeah, I think there's an understanding that this legislation is coming from a place of understanding that there are a lot of issues that come with social media. But also, it does feel to an extent that young people are being blamed for a lot of the issues that come with social media, because we know a lot about a lot of the benefits that social media gives young people, but to just simply take away such an important part of that connection for young people in this day and age can have a lot of negative impacts. So I think it'll be really interesting to see long term what are the impacts that it's having on young people and their connections in the community.
Have you seen any of that so far, or have you heard anything? Have you spoke to any youths that have said that this has impacted them negatively, or it's been a positive thing? We're obviously being shown a very different narrative in the news. We're seeing things like the young Australians love it and they're outside and they're playing more and they're connecting more socially. Is that true? Have you been pushed a narrative, or is it having a positive effect in Australia, or is there a lot of voices that feel like this has had a negative impact on them that obviously are not being shown?
Yeah, I think it's very much a double-edged sword. So I think maybe the first way I'll put it is that a lot of young people have had very established pre-existing communities and connections on social media. So to suddenly lose that has really impacted the way that they connect with their community and also other young people that they might have met through different clubs and communities. But I think the other side of this is that because they don't have that access to social media anymore, they're having to seek out other ways to connect with young people in their community. So that has looked like maybe going out and joining a sports club or finding a local park in the area where young people can kind of catch up. So the way I like to think about it is that social media shouldn't be a replacement for connection for young people, but it is a helpful addition in most scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. I feel almost sort of on the fence about it as well, because on one hand, the other day I was on, I think it was Facebook or TikTok. I was on one of the two and I was watching the reels. And I was going through them, and it was my usual things that I see pushed by my algorithm. You know, it's like it's cooking and it's all those sorts of things. And then all of a sudden a video came up, and I don't think my brain had a chance to really clock what was going on, which was good. Although I realised after, so I'm kind of glad I didn't really like take in the full scenario. But it was someone being shot over in America with everything that's going on with ICE at the moment. And I thought for a second, you know, see if a teenager saying something like that's a really damaging thing to see, someone being shot. You've just witnessed a murder. And it's quite harrowing. And I think to myself, maybe it is a good thing that we don't allow teenagers online. But then at the same time, I think to myself, but we've been so restrictive on what social media is. I mean, we have banned TikTok, Facebook, but we've allowed access to YouTube, which has very similar content, and it's reels, it has comments, I think it could be seen as social. So I don't really see how that matches up, saying, you know, on one hand, it's not good for the kids to be on social media, but there is so many other platforms that could potentially be much worse than moving on to them.
Yeah, and I think you've seen, you obviously have your mainstream platforms like Instagram, Facebook, just to name a few, but you have seen that there are a lot of different alternative platforms that are being proposed as ways for young people to get around the ban, regardless of the ways that they're already getting around the bans in terms of accessing these mainstream platforms.
So are you saying in Australia that the teens are still accessing the platform even though the ban's in place? So a lot of them are actually still active on there. It just, it's
Yeah.
more
So there's
hidden.
been, yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion and debate and a lot of issues actually around effective age verification. So how are these companies actually ensuring that the people accessing these platforms are over the age of 16? What kind of information are they collecting about their users? And how are they ensuring that the information they collected is stored safely and in a private manner? So that's why there's been a lot of kind of discussion around that, is what is the best way for these platforms to actually make sure that their age verification methods are up to date and actually work in the way that they should be.
So how are the platforms currently verifying age? What are they doing to what is the verification process at the moment for?
Yeah, well, I'm not 100% on the like specifics, but I know that there are, obviously when you're signing up for a platform, you'll put in your information and your date of birth and things like that. Um, so a lot of accounts that have been detected as below that specific age have already been deactivated, and they've had a, I guess, grace period to be able to download any key memories or things like that before their accounts have been deactivated. But as you know, on social media, there have been a lot of people that have used fake ages in the past when they've been registering. And there's been a lot of gaps in that verification where there are some young people who are still on the platforms and some young people who have had their accounts deactivated. So there's not this consistency in terms of actually enforcing the ban, which I think is a really
Yeah,
important
actually,
aspect.
I never thought of that. That when some people signed up, they did sign up with their
Mm,
age. Maybe they were 13, 14, and they put their age in and it's been
mm,
okay. And now, obviously, there were kids younger than that, even 11 and
mm,
12, and they've maybe put their age as 17, 18. So I'm assuming those counts now, after the ban's in place, won't be flagged up as your account's being deactivated. So those accounts are sort of flying under the radar, so to speak. That's quite
mm,
interesting. I never really thought of that. If that's the case, it makes me wonder if, with all the talk of it moving over to the UK, if teenagers will just adopt that, they will go and make up an account now for, say, they're 18, 19, and then that way, if it is implemented in the UK or other countries, those specific accounts won't receive that message to
mm,
say you have to leave the platform, download your data. That's a real risk, isn't it?
mm. Yeah, and I think that's why obviously there's been the debate about whether or not the ban should be a thing in the first place. But now that it is in legislation and we know that it will be happening regardless, that's why a lot of discussion is like, how are you actually enforcing this, and how are you actually making sure that the companies are being held to account and ensuring that their systems are working in the way that they should be.
Yeah, I think I seen one of the ways that, I'm not sure if this was to verify or not your age. I think a lot of them was it like facial recognition,
Yeah.
where you were to be in front of the camera and it would be to predict your age. But I remember a long time ago there was a big discussion about how the younger generation actually look a lot older and more mature now. So
Mhm.
I don't, you wonder how that would work.
Yeah, and I think I've seen some things also about um, how some structures of facial recognition and AI have exhibited some very like they've been unable to detect some specific groups of people in a way that's been very glaringly obvious. And that's very much as a result of improper AI training. And that's really left a lot of, especially multiculturally diverse young people falling through those gaps because that kind of AI hasn't been trained to actually meet meet who they are because of the way that the AI has been trained or programmed.
And how is the ban presented in Australia? Because there's been a lot of talk and debates online. I've seen a few posts myself and some in the comments. People are calling it a ban, and then people in the comments are saying, well, it's not really a ban. It's more, onus on the platform to verify that the person that's signing up is over the age of 16, but a parent can, if they choose, to sign their child up but under their name. Is that legal? Like, how strict is the not being on social media below 16? Is it a ban, as in it's illegal, or it's allowed with certain parameters within a parent accepting, or is it just, is everything put on the platforms themselves to say, look, you can't let anyone under the age of 16? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, from what I know, it's been passed into legislation, which effectively means that it is law and that the government has pushed for the social media companies to enforce that. So basically, the government's put out this legislation that young people under the age of 16 should not be using social media, and then they've passed that on to the social media companies to actually enforce that ban itself.
So is a parent allowed to create an account for a child? Is there any sort of comeback there, or is it just, so they wouldn't be breaking any laws if say a girl was 12 or 13 and then mum said, well, I don't agree with the ban, I'm going to make my daughter an account, I'm going to use my date of birth, she can use mine. Is that in a sense legal?
Well, according to the legislation, it wouldn't be allowed. But then again, it comes back to the conversation about how you're actually making sure that the ban is being enforced. Because there are ways such as that, how people are getting around the ban. So that's why I think the conversation now has shifted a lot from whether or not the ban is a thing to now about how are they actually making this happen practically.
And do you think the ban is going to create a lot of vulnerable users? One of the conversations I had previously was the concern around young children using the platform, not telling their parents, not telling anyone. If anything happened to them, if they would experience extortion or anything like that, it would be more difficult for them to find someone to speak to, because they may be told that you're doing something wrong, you're doing something illegal, you shouldn't be on here in the first place, you would be in trouble. I wonder if it opens up more problems, or is that would that be a really small section of it, and it's actually for the majority of the good, so to speak, that it does more good than it does bad?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an issue that has been addressed, and the way they're phrased is that, yes, you should, even if you are under the age of 16, but you experience any form of discrimination or abuse, even though you shouldn't be on that platform in the first place, that you should still report it. So I think that comes from a place of understanding that, yes, there will be some young people who might still be on those platforms, but it does, just because they're under the age of 16 doesn't remove their right to be able to report any instances of negative conduct.
And is there anything else Australia's doing at the moment? I mean, obviously they're the first country to enforce such a law to say under 16s can't be on social media. Are they doing anything else? Do you have mobile phones in schools? Is there any other restrictions coming into place around social media and technology?
Yeah, so the state of Australia, which I'm in, which is Victoria, and I think some other states as well, so they've moved to ban mobile phones in all public schools. So that's been a rule that has been around for a while. But I think other than that, the social media ban has been a really big focal point in terms of the measures that they're taking to address the issues around social media and young people. And it's being presented as the main mechanism that they're using to address the issue.
And is there anything put in place for people that are coming off of social media and feel like they are losing that connection to their peers? When I spoke with Dr. Dean Burnett, he had mentioned that a lot of people in vulnerable groups had found their place online, they'd found
Mm.
that were part of like the LGBT community, they had found, you know, peers online that they could relate to. There was maybe people at home that came from difficult backgrounds, maybe abusive homes, that found that space online and could connect with others. Is there any support being put in place for those sort of vulnerable groups now that they've been removed from that online space?
I mean, no, not really, not necessarily. And I think that's been one of the main issues with this ban, is that there are a lot of young people that their only way to access those communities or to feel like they're a part of something is through social media, because they don't have those same connections within their physical community. So by simply taking that away from them, even though they might be using social media in a way that's positive, and that really benefits their own lives, often feels like you're taking away something from young people when they're not really at fault. So one of the things that I've really been saying is that, and something that I really believe in, is that a lot of the fault and accountability lies at the hand of the social media companies themselves. Because young people deserve to have that outlet to connect and to learn about new things and to share their experiences with their community. But because of the experiences of some young people who have really fallen through the gaps because of the inability of the social media companies to actually address those issues, doesn't mean that you should take away that right for every young person who might really benefit from that.
And do you know what people are doing now? Are they moving on to other online spaces? Are they trying to form a community elsewhere? Have they moved on to other platforms? I know there are a few people at the moment that are trying to build a safer social media that is for the young. But then it makes me wonder: would their platform be under the ban as well? Because I have seen. I don't know if you've heard that there's certain different companies that have came around to say we're creating a social media, it's safe, it's for children. But is that not just going to go under the ban as well? Because the government will say, well, no, because it's still a social media. It doesn't matter if it has guardrails, if it has, you know, a lot of safety put in place, it still would come under that umbrella.
Yeah, I think that's something that, as it unfolds and as the government really fleshes out this legislation, we'll start to kind of go through and figure out what kind of platforms are banned and which ones are not. Because I think up until now, especially with the e-safety commission that we have here, they've really been going through individual platforms like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and then kind of determining what level of access young people should have with those platforms. So I think as the ban starts to roll out, which it already has, I think we'll continue to see what kind of platforms are under that ban, or what kind of platforms will maybe grow in popularity because of it.
And what is the consensus among the young people when everyone says social media is the main cause for mental health problems? It's causing all sorts of problems. Kids aren't focusing.
Mm,
They're viewing content that's inappropriate. There is
mm,
a big push around at the moment. Well, not so much a push, but I think there is a big narrative that social media causes mental health problems, and the
mm,
majority of the mental health problems caused in teens
mm,
and young adults is due to social media.
mm,
What are the teens saying about that themselves? Do they agree with that, or do they feel that anyone that has suffered from mental health problems, it's actually
mm,
not been directly because of social media? There's a
mm.
lot of other factors that are just not being taken into account.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think simply blaming social media for mental health issues, which is a very deep reaching and complex issue, is a very simple way to put it. We can't just point at one factor and say that it leads to mental health issues, because there are such a wide variety of factors in a young person's life that can contribute to them being in an ill state of mental health. It's not untrue that the social media can exacerbate some of these issues, but to simply determine that as the single most important factor of a young person's mental health is a really negative connotation, and something that I think has really, I think, led to the implementation of this ban.
It's very headline pushed, and I think that's what's really difficult when it comes to thinking about kids and giving them agency and young teenagers. Is there's always this narrative that's pushed all the time, and it's like when I spoke to Dr. Dean Burnett, he said that negative negative headlines always read the best, and they always are the most shared and they're the most jumped on. If you have, you know, like social media causes mental health problems and 62% of teenagers,
Mm,
everyone's going to jump on that and be like, okay, we need to ban
mm,
social media, we need to do
mm,
this, we need to do that. But saying a young person that suffered from mental health problems that found their community and prospered isn't going to make a headline. Like social
mm,
media saved a life is
mm,
not going to make the news. It's always going
mm,
to be the negative narrative. And I wonder how young people feel when all the adults are having this conversation around these headlines about them without inviting them into the conversation themselves. And I know a lot of people will say, well, they're young and they don't know, they're teenagers, they just want to be
mm.
online. Like, how does young people feel about that? Do they feel like they're not being heard?
Yeah, there's this very strong sense of disillusionment with a lot of decision making processes. And like I mentioned before, it feels like for a lot of young people that they're the ones being targeted when it's the fault of the social media companies and the government who haven't introduced proper measures and systems to actually protect young people on those platforms. Because we know what the benefit of social media is, and we do know the other side of it, which is the negative impacts. And I think this connotation between ill mental health and social media is just identifying, yes, social media can be a factor to ill mental health, but it's not the only factor. So when we start to put those two things together, it can really lead to a lot of negative societal perspectives on what social media is like for young people. But I think in terms of the attitude of the youth here themselves, yeah, there's a very strong sense of disillusionment and confusion as to why this ban is around in the first place and how it'll actually positively impact them.
And do you know if you spoke to any young people and asked them what you're doing now, now that the ban's in place? Did they?
Mm,
Because obviously it was something that was spoke about for a long time before it was implemented. Did
mm,
the younger generation have a plan in place of what they were going to do next, where they were going to meet socially? I'm
mm.
assuming there was a lot of young people that had big followings and spaces and communities online. Did they
Mm.
make a backup plan for what's the next step for them?
Yeah, I think this is something that really depends on the young person and their situation themselves. So, like I mentioned before, there are some young people that have just continued their access on these platforms because the enforcement mechanisms haven't come into place properly. Um, and there are also other young people which are really looking back towards those physical methods of communication. So, through clubs or community spaces. But something that I've been really emphasizing is we can't take away social media without improving the other aspects of community connection. So if we are to just take away social media, we can't just simply expect young people to go out into their community and to just find activities and to make connections with other young people if we don't provide those opportunities to them in the first place. Because you can't take away such an important avenue of communication and connection without providing another way for them to replace that or to find another way to engage with that.
Yeah, and of course, social media will have connected a lot of people through different areas that won't be able to all come together in the same space if people are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds and they don't have the affordability to go out, join clubs, and not from the best homes. All that's put in place. I suppose those kids are sort of taken out the equation and left behind.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. And there are a lot of barriers. If you were to use, say, sport for an example, here is one of the main ways that young people like to connect. So, for example, if you're to join a sport club, engaging in weekly sport in a team format, but there are a lot of barriers to actually accessing that. So, if there's a young person that can't afford, for example, club fees, or they can't afford the equipment that they need to play, then how they're able to engage in that way with the other young people in their community. So I think this ban, in a way, has been good in the sense that it's highlighted the issue of the potential dangers of social media and some of the things that we can do to address it, but also emphasize the importance of empowering young people with the opportunity to connect in their own ways within their communities without social media. Because, like I said before, it's always been my strong belief that social media is an addition to connection, not a replacement. So I think finding that balance is really important.
Yeah, and I'm guessing they'll have moved on to other spaces by now. There'll be Discord. I think that's not banned. As we said, you have YouTube where you can still create content,
Mm,
post reels, comment in those spaces, follow each other. It has a very similar social media setup, although they say they're not a social media,
mm,
but in the way that you can interact and create content is very much the same. So I'm guessing
mm,
some people are maybe in YouTube, some are in Discord, some are maybe meeting up in gaming platforms
mm.
like Roblox.
Yeah. I think the pursuit of alternative platforms is definitely one of the main ways that young people are reacting or adapting to the ban.
And what do you think to the overall ban? Do you think in the long term it will be a good thing, and the young people will find alternative ways to connect through clubs? And because they say that obviously being online, there's a lot of comparison. You compare yourself, and obviously the
Mm,
content that you see online is the best of the best. And young people, they are impressionable because they're young and their brains are still developing, and they're looking for that social respect, and they're looking online and they're seeing people that have more money and are doing better. And then there was the issue of accessing content like Andrew Tate. That was all a big issue. So I wonder if, in a sense, they think it is better to take them off it, even though there is
mm,
negativity, and there will be an adaptation phase. I mean, in my generation when I was young, don't mean to sound like one of those. In my day,
mm,
we didn't have social media, and we were okay, we were fine, we had friends, we made connections.
mm.
So do you think in the long term, although it hurts right now, it will be a good thing, or do you think it's a case of trying to put the horse back in once it's bolted? We live in a connected digital world. We Technology is all around us. Kids are interacting with it from the ages of 2, 3 with their first tablet, watching videos. Do you think it's just too late?
Mm. Yeah, I think the thing that I appreciate about the ban is that it is taking decisive action. And yes, it might even be too late, but it's still something, and it's still something that highlights the issue as well. And I think a lot of the discussion and debate that it sparked has been really important for people in thinking about their own relationship with social media, not just for young people. But I think that when we think about social media, it has so much potential to be such an empowering space for young people. But we really tend to focus on a lot of the negative aspects of it, which are there. And that's definitely not to deny the fact that there are a lot of negative things that happen on social media, and there are a lot of factors within social media that can contribute to mental ill health. But is that something that we should put at the fault of the young people, or is it something that we should put at the fault of the social media companies and governments themselves? So I think the conversation now has to be about when these young people aren't 16 anymore, they're going to, when they turn 17, they're going to start using social media. But how do we make that social media space where they feel safe, they feel empowered, they see positive content in a way that empowers their lives? And how can we make that transition as smooth as possible? Because we don't know what social media is going to look like in 10 or 15 years. But what are we doing to the young people who are under the ban now to prepare them for when they will be using social media? So that for me is one of the main things for me that comes to mind.
So I suppose what you're saying is social media. It would be better if it was just not banned and it was left alone, and we educated the young around being safe online and using it responsibly, rather than saying, look, no until you're 16. Because really, developmentally, is there a difference between the mentality of a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old? They're slightly different, but in terms of risk and decision making, I mean, it's not like 16's a magic number where as soon as you turn 16, you are more confident and you're not in those societal pressures of your peers. That doesn't change until you're a lot older, 21, if not more for some people, where they get to that age where they're like, oh, I'm not bothered by that. I don't care what people think. So maybe it would be better to increase education and awareness online and keep putting pressure on the platforms to be safer and be more, and teaching kids about algorithms. Even just hovering on something for a second is, enough of a signal to platforms to say they're interested in this content.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about that is that you'll see a lot about a lot of the mechanisms on social media to indicate that you're interested in content work very well. Whereas on the other hand, the mechanisms to indicate that you're not interested in content don't work as well. So I think that demonstrates a lot about what kind of algorithm are these young people being exposed to on social media.
Yeah, I think it's the thing that's so strange about the algorithm, and a lot of people point out, is sometimes you only have to watch a video once to be given more of that content. And it shouldn't be the case. It should be something that's repetitively viewed or looked into before the algorithm thinks, right, okay, this person is interested in this. Because if you come across a subject or a video that is maybe graphical, you might stop for a second out of human interest and go, oh my goodness, and then go past. But that shouldn't be picked up as an indicator of this person's interested in this content. One of the things I was thinking, and actually I was just thinking about it just now, was I wonder, with so many people being online and social media and having those connections and people that they speak to from different geographical areas, it's not really a group that they can say, do you want to meet up on Friday at a cafe? They are too far away. They've created strong connections and a strong group. When they leave and they're banned, I wonder how many young people are going to turn to ChatGPT for that conversation and maybe to voice concerns or worries and start to build a bit of a relationship and a rapport with AI to get what they're missing from online. I'm starting to think, could that be a possibility? And that's could be worse in a way.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important considerations is how safe is AI, and what kind of guardrails and safety mechanisms are we putting in place to protect young people from AI? Because we can ban young people under the age of 16 from using social media, but what do we do for AI? Do we just ban them from using AI as well? So I think a lot of the same risks that are associated with using social media are either the same with AI or even amplified, because with AI, it's very different. It's in a way that's very much personalized to the young people. And you'll see a lot of cases and scenarios of how young people have been manipulated or even been coerced into thinking certain things by AI. And there's been a lot of disturbing cases of that in recent times.
Yeah, it does make you wonder if someone maybe speaks to a group, even from another country or the other side of Australia, can voice their concerns or their opinions. I mean, like I had the conversation before, there's people that come from abusive homes and they're not able to speak out, don't feel comfortable talking about it. Have a group that they speak to online that, has suffered the same thing, that they can confide in, is now being taken away from them. Will they go into ChatGPT and start saying, this is what's happening, and we know not just ChatGPT, but any sort of generative AI that's conversational, that encourages, that's not good, that's not right, you should do this, you should do something about it. It doesn't have that ability like a human would to be able to say, yeah, like maybe go and seek help. And I know they're trying to put guardrails in place, but they're still not there because we know there's been deaths through conversation with Gen AI. So I suppose that is a big concern. It makes you wonder if having this conversation there are more negatives than there are positives. Yes, we want to protect kids. No, we don't want them to see those videos. We don't want them put under social pressure, but they're under social pressure in schools. That was a thing before Facebook came around or Instagram was a thing. At school, there was social groups. There was the girls and the boys that had more money and then laughed at the people that didn't. And there was, peer pressure. That all existed. And I know it's amplified online, but is it better to restrict it? I'm starting to think it's not really. It's not enough. It's the kids are online, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and I think the fact of the matter is that we won't be able to just prevent young people from being online, because regardless of how much thought or consideration or how much safety you try to put into any online space, really, there are always going to be risks, no matter what you do. But is the question about whether or not we prevent young people just because of those risks, or are we actually going to effectively work towards minimizing those risks so those spaces are safe and empowering for young people? And I think as well, just banning social media, it makes, from a lot of young people that I've been talking to, it makes them feel as though they're at fault for using social media, as if it's their fault for using those platforms, when these are the ways that they're connecting, and we can't expect them to just give up that connection for no reason.
Yeah, it's like taking a toy from a child. You're basically saying, right, okay, you're not to be trusted with this. You're not doing a good job on here. You're being reckless, therefore we're taking it away from you. I wonder how much isolation it causes as well if you are going into school as a group and there's no phones in schools and you have this group maybe who are still on social media and they're talking about things that are happening online. Such and such said this. Did you see this video? Did you watch that? And then you'll have the people that really cannot get on social media, don't have the phone at school, feel really left out of the conversation. Almost like, an intensified sort of FOMO. They're going to be like, what's happening and what are you talking about? And they'll be like, oh, it was last night. We were talking about it on Instagram or Facebook. And they're like, oh, I can't get on there. And it's not like, can you show me at school? Because they'll be like, we don't have our phones, they're banned. So they're going to feel really, really isolated from those spaces because, as you said, there are those who have found ways around it. There's parents who have actively said on TikTok, my child will still be on it. I'll let her be on it. She should get to connect with her friends. And then it's going to leave those that are not in that conversation feeling really probably quite stressed at school.
Yeah, and I think what you've touched on is really important. It's going to potentially create a very big disparity between this young person has social media, but this young person doesn't. And if you consider, say, a friend group who are in the same age group, and half of them have social media and they're using it to connect with each other, and the other half of them don't. So you can just think about what kind of dynamic that would create within those social connections of young people when you take away such an integral part of it.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of them all meeting up every day after school, except 3 or 4 of them are not invited. So they don't know the connections are forming and deeper and they're getting closer and the other friends are just being left by the side because they just can't access those spaces. I mean, there's a lot of parents out there that are like, yes, the ban, it's great. Take the kids off. They're not having a phone. You don't need a phone now. Why? You're not in social media. You don't need it for school. And then you have the parents that say, well, we don't agree. We think, there you go. There's your phone. There's the social media account. Speak to your friends. It does create a big gap. I think there's more negatives than there is positives to this. And I think it would have been better if there was more guardrails put in place. And I know it's difficult. We've already seen in the news that some of the people that were their job is to review the videos on Facebook that are being uploaded and keep taking them down because they are graphic in nature, they started getting like PTSD and were wanting to, sue Meta because they were like, the content that they're just viewing constantly is just so disturbing. It's hard to filter out all those videos, but at the same time, you have access to those videos online anyway. There's so many places you can see. I mean, before, when we were young, when phones, not social media, but when phones and the internet started becoming a thing, there were some really, really graphical, really bad videos that were circulating when we were young. And it was not through social media. People found them on all these sorts of strange websites that they could share, and they were taking them to parties and everyone was watching. So you're really not, kids are not going to see that content just because they're not on Facebook or social media. And YouTube can be just as big a culprit for having some of the worst videos. I mean, when my daughter was young, she was on the kids' YouTube, and it was known to be awful because people were having like Peppa Pig, and it looked like Peppa Pig, but it wasn't. It was like Peppa Pig, and he was like stabbing his brother George, and you wouldn't know. And kids were just sitting watching this, and the parents would look over and say, "Oh, Peppa Pig," but it wasn't.
Yeah. I think the way I see it is that we're not, like I mentioned, we're not going to prevent young people from ever seeing any content online just because of this ban. There are ways they are getting around the ban. There's ways that they will still keep seeing this content, but what are we doing to make that content safer? Because we're not going to be able to fully get them to completely avoid that in the first place. But how do we make it safer, not only for young people, but for adults as well? Because we can see the effect in adults, but that's something that's only a higher risk for young people who might be 12, 13, or 14 years old. Being exposed to that kind of content at such a young age can have really debilitating long-term impacts.
Yeah. And there's no really going back now because it's not something like, usually when governments do things, they won't turn around and say later, do you know what, it wasn't a good idea. We're going to let you have it again. So they're going to have to really stick with this and defend it. And it will be interesting to see the mental health rates now compared to 2 to 3, 4 year time. Are they better? Is the kids doing better at school? Because really this is the main sticking point. It's the same with the book The Anxious Generation. I'm not sure if you've read it or you've heard about it. A lot of people reference that and say, it's just not good for the kids. It's ruining their mental health. But like you said, there's a lot of people that have a lot of mental health issues for so many reasons, and social media may exasperate that, maybe not necessarily help. But it's not as if since a child went on Instagram, they now have depression. But that's the sort of narrative that the media is pushing. And I think a lot of the other countries are starting to feel like they have to follow Australia because Australia's doing so well. Like they're pushing the kids off of social media and they're protecting them. And now that other countries are starting to feel under pressure, there's talk about it in the UK. Are we going to follow suit, and are we going to have the ban as well?
Yeah, I think it comes back to how that connotation around social media, because the negative stories around social media are amplified very, very loudly. And that is what makes it seem like, oh, if we take this away from young people, then we're going to fix all of their mental health issues, etc. But it completely ignores the fact that there are so many other factors in young people's lives. And there are so many things that we can fix about social media that can actually address those problems. But by taking away, you completely remove the potential to actually make a change that turns it into an empowering space.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of space to improve social media access for young people, but I don't think I agree banning it is the right way to go. But I think a lot of parents and a lot of people are reading the headlines. They're being pushed, the news is being pushed, scary statistics with no real depth to them. are being pushed. You know, these 62% of children have mental health problems that go online. Well, yeah, that doesn't mean that it was because they were online. It's just, you're just in the amount of people that use social media and the amount of people that have a mental health problem, and putting those two together and making it sound like cause and effect when it's not. It was never like that.
Yeah, that's why I think context is really important, but also critical thinking as well. Is how well do we understand and analyze the information that's being presented to us? And it's really important skill for young people as well, because we know that they're more vulnerable to mis and disinformation online. But what are we doing to give them the skills that they need to be able to discern between what's true or fake, or even recently what's real and what's AI generated, because it's becoming increasingly hard to tell the difference between true and fake information.
It really is. That is something that I think children are going to have to really start learning in school. I mean, instead of governments pushing bans and barriers, and it sounds good in the news. You know, the Australian government are the first to protect the under 16s and ban social media. They make good headlines, and it sounds impressive to people that are involved in government and policies, and look, they're doing something. But really, when it comes down to it, implementing digital literacy and implementing, you know, the education at a very young age, it's still very slow to catch up. And that's the most important thing, especially with what you're saying with misinformation. I was checking on TikTok the other day, there are some videos, there's been like some big snowstorms in America. And I was like, oh, I wonder what's going on over there. And there was so many videos that I just really couldn't distinguish, is this real? Like, is this a real video? Because some of them weren't outrageously, you know, obvious that you would say that's never real. It looks like incredibly would never happen. It was just normal videos, but there was just something that made me think, is this a real video? And it started to become quite annoying to go through social media and have to guess, oh wow, look at, in fact, wait, is that real?
Yeah, I think it's becoming, yeah, it's very confusing to say the least when you're trying to find information on social media.
Yeah, and it's going to become, like you said, in the next couple of years, who knows where technology is going to be. I mean, technology advances so rapidly, and now we have AI, and AI is getting so much better at everything. It's being embedded in everywhere. It's even been just trying to embed it into education. There is nowhere at the moment that it feels like AI isn't touching. What if you are 14 right now? How is it going to look in the years to come when you're 16 and it's like, on you go, you're free to go on TikTok and Instagram? That's
And that
going to
really
be a
goes,
totally,
yeah, and that really goes back to the thing about what are we doing to prepare young people for that transition? Because if it's becoming an increasingly unstable and unpredictable world of social media, how can we just expect them to have not had that exposure from a younger age, which they normally would have had, and then just to, as they would say, throw them into the deep end once they turn 17? So
yeah,
I
maybe
think,
in a way it's like not letting them grow up with it. It's holding them back. Now that we're
yeah,
in this big change of AI, it's not letting them go through the motions of how it's going to get better, and let them see and judge from themselves how AI is changing, and they can see the evolution of it and know how to respond to it, and what's fake and what's potentially, you know, something that they're going to have to think about and say, is this right? What is the source? They're going to be withheld from it, then let onto it when they're 16, and it could be so advanced that they'll just be completely out of depth.
yeah, because I think that the ban isn't effective if we don't properly take into consideration the other factors that surround it. So, like we mentioned before, about maintaining physical connections, community connections, improving the safety of social media, empowering young people with critical thinking and analysis skills. We can't just do the ban, leave those things to the side, and expect everything that to work out it by itself.
Yeah, it's like teaching them mechanics without going near a car. It's like you don't need to see it. We'll teach you to be a good digital citizen. We'll teach you to, how to behave online, how to spot misinformation, how algorithms work. But, when it comes to working with it, you can't. It's like teaching someone to be a mechanic and they say, well, when can we look under the hood? And it's like, well, you can't. Maybe in 5 years' time. It's like, oh. And it's like you said, it feels like Australia has made this decision and they've took children and young vulnerable adults away from spaces that were, in a sense, good for them. Not always, but was, in a sense, helping them, giving them a community, and they haven't given them that support to come away. And they're also, where's the support going to be when it's finally like, here you go, here's the keys, go for it. You can just sign up to Instagram, TikTok, and as you said, who knows what these platforms are going to look like in the future. So that's missing the, I suppose, onboarding and offboarding.
Yeah, I mean, and to use the analogy of a car, it's like, it's almost as if obviously you have to reach a certain age to be able to drive a car, but you're not teaching the person how to drive the car. And on the first day that they reach the age to be able to drive it, you just expect that they know how to use it. But if they don't know how to use it, they might get in an accident or something bad might happen. So that's kind of the situation that we are in with this social media ban, where we've implemented the ban, but we haven't properly taken into consideration anything else outside of it.
Yeah, one of the last guests that I had used a sort of analogy. It's like, we take kids out and we hold their hand and don't run next to the road and look left, look right before you cross. We build all this safety until they get to an age where they can just be out in the street alone. We don't just, they get to a certain age and we open the door and say, right, on you go. When they've never had that, they've never been taught how to cross the road safely and how to, navigate the outside world without being hurt.
Yeah. So I think that pre-preparation is really an important aspect, because the young people won't have the exposure that they normally would have had before they reach the age of 17.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm guessing there's going to be some studies done over the next couple of years to see how it's affected young people, how they're doing now. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the mental health rates go down. I don't know if they will. It would be interesting to see if they increased with anxiety, pressure, maybe the stress of young people not being able to, being isolated from their peers. That's definitely going to be interesting. But I think now that the ban has been pushed through and there isn't going back from it, it is now going to be about supporting young people that had strong connections online and, like you said yourself, preparing them for going online, what that looks like and being safe online. But I think it's also naive of us to think they're coming up to 16, let's start preparing them from social media, because they were probably in a way already on it. They've probably went on other platforms. So they still have had that exposure to online life, just maybe not as safely as we would have liked them to be, because we now don't know what they're doing. There's going to be a lot of, I'm on it because I, signed up before it. I had a post a while ago on TikTok, and I think it was about Roblox, and there was so many comments. I actually think it hit the wrong audience for some reason. It was supposed to be more aimed at parents to give them information, but it seemed to have hit the kids. And they were all commenting on this post about things that they do to get around being online. And some of the things I was like, that's crazy. It's not good, but it was smart. Like, people were saying things like they had a second phone. Someone had said that they use, like the black box terminal. It's like, the command line and things. It's not like it's, what's it called again? I can't remember, but they were on that, and the parent came into the room and it was like, I just told my mum I was doing schoolwork, but I was going through that way to get on socials. There was so many creative ways that I thought, I couldn't believe it. Somebody had said that they sent their nan a PIN code to use their account, and had messaged a gran and was like, "What's the PIN I just sent you?" to like authenticate and things. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And yeah, that's what I've really been saying, is that we're not going to stop young people from accessing these platforms at all. But what are we doing to make them safer? Because any kind of legislation or any kind of mechanisms we're going to put in, there's always going to be an accessible way to get around that. So if we know that they're going to be there on there anyways, what are we doing to make sure that content is safe for them?
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, thank you very much for coming and speaking to us. It's really interesting to see, what's actually going on in Australia. It's important to speak to young people and hear those voices, because the ones in the media and the adults and the politicians are the loudest. All the adults are arguing amongst themselves about, is this good? Is it bad? Why is it good? Why is it bad? When really it's like, why don't we hear what the young generation have to say? Do they feel it's affecting their mental health? Do they feel it's beneficial? So thank you very much. It was lovely to meet you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.